Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Sharice Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. Have you ever felt like you want to be able to do something different, or you're not quite sure what the path is that you're supposed to be doing, but you're ready to scale and you're ready to do well? Well, today's your day because Karen Gonen is our guest, and she is a realtor, and she also is very involved as a mom, and she does many other things, especially what I liked as a referral kind of a chapter that you're starting in your area. So without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Hi, my name is Karen Gonen. I've been a real estate agent and broker for 9 years. Last year, I was actually the #1 agent in my county in Sussex County, New Jersey. And I find that balancing work and life and momhood is a challenge that I welcome and hope to master very soon. But I think for now, I'm doing pretty well.
Okay, so let's talk about that because I know what it's like to be a realtor, and I read what your production is, and so I know. I mean, every state's different because some homes might be 200,000, some homes the average is over $1 million. So to say that it's a great accomplishment, and
Thank you.
I know what it takes, and so therefore I know how much time it takes. And so how do you juggle that balance between being a mom and being home? Because my kids are on spring break right now. I'm sure yours as well, and not spring, summer break. And I'm like, hey, I'm not home right now, and I really want to be. We're halfway through summer. And so what are you doing to make sure that your time is protected?
So I actually use Google Calendar, and I've been using it since I started in real estate. I just made a decision that my kids come first no matter what, because everything I do in my business is for them. They're my why. And so if it's blocked off in my calendar, the buyer or seller that I'm serving currently doesn't know if I'm with my kids or if I'm showing other clients. And I believe boundaries are a healthy thing. So if they say, can you show us Monday at 2? And I know I have an event with my kids, I say I can't do 2 o'clock. How about 4? So I give them several different options, and I know the value I bring to the client, and most of them would like to wait. I'll give you an example. I was just in Israel for 3 weeks, not because I wanted to. I was only supposed to be there for 7 days, but then the war broke out, and I was stuck for an additional 2 weeks. And so I obviously did no business, but all of my buyers and all of my sellers, and even listing appointments I hadn't scheduled yet, meaning people that reached out, but I didn't set an appointment yet, said, we will wait for you because you're worth it. From one phone call conversation of me telling them that I'm terribly sorry, I'm overseas, and even though my phone is working, I can't physically show them a house. Each and every one of them said, that's perfectly fine. We're willing to wait.
That's amazing.
So.
So do you have an assistant that you work with, or do you have a team of people, or are you solo?
So I am a solo agent. I do call myself the Karen Cares team. I do have 4 junior agents under me. They are all agents. I give them leads. I don't make any of their money. They do their own volume. They keep their own money. My assistant works about 20 hours a week. She works as much as I need her to, but she doesn't show any houses. She's not an agent. She can't discuss properties. All she does is my social media. If there's any paperwork that I need her to handle that is not signature prone by a seller or a buyer, she'll write it up. I'll review it and I'll send it. She does all my closing gifts, which are a blessing because I am not creative in any way. So I'll describe the buyer and seller, and she'll come up with something magnificent to send to them. And that's how I use her. I do have my fiance, who is also a full-time agent, but he's just an extension of me. So if I'm stuck at a listing appointment, he's the one that goes and shows a house to a buyer, but he doesn't have any of his own transactions. He doesn't actually deal with any buyers or sellers on his own at all.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. That's
Yeah,
great.
so I am a solo agent.
Okay. Mhm. No, I think that that's fantastic. For the listeners that might not be realtors, but they are in the service industry. How do you get your leads?
I actually pay Zillow for leads. I find that that's worked literally from day one. So when I first joined real estate, it was actually my fiance that said, "We need to invest money." And I said, "We don't have any money." And he said, "To make money, you have to invest money." So we started with $900 a month, and those weren't the greatest leads, but I do have clients that I've kept for the last 8 years from Zillow that I received. So Zillow has definitely been one of my better tools for leads.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting because some people don't. I mean, there's a school of thought where it costs a lot of money, and if you want to be in the top tier to be able to make it, you do have to spend a lot with Zillow. But at the same time, I like your fiance's attitude because, in the words of Dan Kennedy, he who spends the most wins. Because if you don't spend a lot, then you don't win a
Right.
lot. So, yeah.
Exactly. I do believe that to make money, you have to spend money. Obviously, it's a proven fact in my experience.
Mhm.
But the other thing that I do on a regular basis is I volunteer a lot for different charity organizations. And I help them just because I want to. It's part of who I am. That's why my tagline is Karen Cares.
Mhm.
And so that's how other leads come. Like in my town, I don't advertise at all because my town, the median is $360,000 as opposed to when I started, which it was 200,000. We went up a little bit, but it's still very low. So I advertise in the more affluent areas that are outside of my town. And that's how I get those leads. And generally, any buyer that I meet and we end up going out, I also end up selling their home wherever they're at. So that gives me double the business.
Mhm. Yep. And have you found that lately, since the change, which I love the change with NAR, but do you feel like open houses, which used to be a bust, I have had so much business doing open houses this year. Like I'm double ending both sides and I'm selling there. So it's one transaction turns into 3 to 5 transactions.
So our open houses in our area are not that great.
Oh,
They're usually fairly empty, and so I'll be there to represent the seller. But I always bring a few buyer's agents with me from my brokerage because I really want them to make money. And new agents, first of all, have very little money, and most of them don't get any leads. So all of my agents that are in my office, they all get the leads that I get. And whoever gets the lead, that's their lead. So I know it's maybe not that business oriented to do that. However, I was a real estate agent after the fall. So Sussex County is it's a few years behind the rest of the counties in New Jersey. And so our big boom of real estate owned properties and bank owned properties actually came in 2016 and 2017 by the time the banks were all done getting all their paperwork done. And so I sold my first year, I sold 19 houses, but they were all somewhere between 30 to $50,000.
wow.
And so it was very low, but it was so hard because my broker at the time was taking 50% of my commission, which is why I was running around like a chicken with her head cut off. I don't want that for my agents. I want them to succeed. So if I can help them, I believe in karma. It always comes back to me.
Okay, but you're paying for the leads from Zillow, which are not cheap, and yet you're not charging your
I
team
am not.
anything.
No.
Like how? So you might not get the leads someone else does, and yet
Yeah.
that's
And
very
that's okay. I am totally fine with that because the better they do, they bring all of that positiveness and all that happiness into the office. And that happiness breeds happiness. And that's what I want. I want happy agents in my office. They have availability to speak to me at any time of the day. I'm always, well, attached to my phone, should be surgically attached. But it's not. So they can get me at any point in time, and I'm happy to help. We're doing Zoom meetings at 11, 12 o'clock at night. I don't care. I just want them to succeed. That's all I want for them. And the universe has a way to bring it all back to us.
You know, it's so funny because I was singing in a choir this weekend, and so I didn't want my phone up on the stand. So my parents were in town, so I'm like, "Here, Dad, here's my phone," and I go, "That's worth a lot of money, so don't lose it." He's like, "Oh, really?" And it's so true because it is like, I mean, it's so much business and so much opportunity, and so
Exactly.
unfortunately, it is attached to our hip.
It is. It is. And I do put it on silent mode when I'm making dinner with my kids. So for that hour and a half, 2 hours, I'm dead to the world. And I always tell the clients, if you leave me a voicemail, if I see that you've called or you text me, I will always call you back 100% of the time. But if I'm not picking up, I'm just not available. And then I make sure it doesn't matter what time I'm done. I will text them and I'll say, is this a good time to chat?
Mhm.
So that way I'm not infringing on their time with their family, but my kids always come first. And it doesn't matter what leads comes through. If I'm with my kids, something else will come along. I'm okay with that.
Mhm. Interesting. Okay, so in your life, let's transition away from real estate for a minute. You have moved 29 times.
I have.
Like, was it all as a kid? And
No.
okay.
No, I moved from Israel, which is where I was born and raised. When I was 13, we moved to the US. So in Israel, we moved about 6 or 7 times when I was a kid. Then we moved to the US, we moved to Connecticut. In Connecticut, we moved 3 to 4 times. Then we moved to New Jersey. My senior year, before my senior year, my sister and I went to Israel to visit our grandparents. And when we got off the plane at JFK, my parents started going in the opposite direction to Connecticut. And my sister and I, half asleep because we had just gotten off a 12-hour flight, we're like, where are you guys going? And they're like, we're going home. Just go to sleep. We're going home. And when we woke up, we were in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. They had moved us through the summer. So I started my senior year in Fair Lawn High. And it's just how my life has always been. We were always moving, and my parents always made it seem like an adventure. And so it was never disruptive. It was always, you're going to meet new people. It's going to be a new adventure for us. You're going to get so excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's how I was raised. And then when I moved to New Jersey, obviously I was 16 years old, finished school. I had to go out on my own, so I moved out and then I moved a couple of times. Then we actually moved to California for 5 years, which is where my kids were born, which we also moved around a couple of times. And we came back to Jersey. Then I got separated and I moved to Florida for a couple of months, and then I came back to Jersey and moved a few more times. So it's a lot of move, which is, I think, prepared me for this career.
Mhm. Well, especially because you deal with people moving all the time.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah. And I'm very much the extrovert. So I never have a problem talking to anyone because I have nothing to lose. What are they going to do? Say no? Okay.
it's interesting because like my husband, he he moved at 9 years old to another house where they to this day still own the house. His mom's trying to sell it because she's in a nursing home now. But I mean, twice his entire life. And he did for
Wow.
2 years, he went to like South America and served a mission. But I was not like that. I mean, I think from until I was 6, I think I'd moved 6 times. I mean, it was ridiculous how
Wow.
much my family moved. And then we moved a couple more. And then, like 2 weeks after graduation, we moved from California to DC, kind of like your move. And so, it's not a big deal to me. And it's just something you do. However, I mean, there's two opposite ends. So how do you handle that? And like, what's the transition for your kids? How'd you do it as a kid and not, especially your senior year, not feel like you
Yeah.
just lost all your friends?
I don't know. I guess I've always been someone that adapts very quickly. And it's funny because my kids, with me alone, have moved 8 times. They're 16 and 17, and we've been in this house for 8 years. But before that, we were moving literally every year or every other year. So they're fully adaptable, just like me, which I think is a strength because you're able to bounce around and you're able to stay true to who you are, and you're stronger, you're more resilient as a result of that.
And you don't get comfortable.
You do get comfortable, but you find that there's very little. You don't need a lot in order to be comfortable. You're kind of self-contained.
Mhm.
So you are your own home. So home is not a physical location. Home is where you are. And that's what I teach my kids too.
Wow, that's interesting. So you've been a realtor for 9 years.
Yes.
What made you, I mean, what were you doing before and how did you find this entrepreneurial? career.
So that's actually a funny story. I had been in the shipping industry for 20 years. I had a company with my dad and my sister, and unfortunately the company closed down, but it was perfect timing because I was able to get a divorce as a result of that because we lost everything we had. So there was nothing to fight over except for my kids, and that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Just my kids, because things don't matter to me. Physical things don't matter. The only thing I wanted was my kids. And so I ended up working for a beauty company out in Queens, which was an hour and a half drive from where I was living, which was Ringwood, New Jersey. I worked there for a year and I just found that it wasn't the place for me. The owner and I didn't see eye to eye, and I had always been in management, so I just didn't find her practices as something that I was willing to contend with. And so I left and I was in between jobs. And my then boyfriend wanted to flip houses in Vernon, and nobody was calling him back. Like I said, that was the year that all the houses were 30 to $50,000, and at the time, I didn't know that it was all money based. So I was just getting annoyed and saying, "Hey, how come nobody's picking up the phone?" And he would complain. So I said, because I was in a hiatus in between jobs, I said, "You know what? Let me take over communication." I had always been in management, so there was always lots of customer service, lots of communication. Plus, my boyfriend has this really cute Israeli accent, and he thinks that people don't understand him, even though they do.
Mhm.
So I said, let me take over because I don't have an accent, only when I say certain things. I said, I'll take over. I'll call, I'll text, I'll email. Nobody was calling me back. 2 weeks straight, I called, I don't even know how many, I can't even count. In 2 weeks, I had called at least 20, 30, 40 agents, and no one was calling me back. One night, it was a Thursday night, my boyfriend comes in from work and I'm just blah 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 blah. How come these people are not picking up the phone? Aren't they supposed to be professional? What the heck? Da 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 da. Don't they need to sell a house to make money? And I'm going on and on and on because I'm very frustrated. That's just not professional. And so he looked at me and I'm just going off. And he looks at me and he goes, "You're not doing anything. Why don't you just become an agent?" And so I was signed up for classes that night and I started school that Monday. And the rest is history.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, professional development, because obviously it's required, but I have a tendency to go extreme on professional development.
Same.
What do you recommend any entrepreneur do to stay motivated, to stay up with things and in their industry?
So I actually, funny you should talk about credits. In the state of New Jersey, we're required to do 24 credits. For the cycle that just ended yesterday, I had 64 credits.
Oh,
Because I'll take any class and I'll take classes over and I do a lot of the Jared James and the Irish gentleman whose name I can never remember, but
Brian
he's
Buffini.
sorry.
Brian Buffini.
Yes, I love him. He's
Love.
amazing. And I buy every book under the sun that there is. And if I show you my library, you're going to be like, she's a nut.
No.
Because there are books everywhere. I have hundreds. I see them.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
have hundreds of books and I wake up between 5 and 5:30 every morning. So I need to fill up that time and I spend it on reading books before it's professional to call people because I don't text back at 5 or 5:30 or 6. So
Mhm.
I need to fill up my time because I'm very much a morning person. So I need to keep myself occupied. Otherwise, I get into trouble.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. All right. What strategies do you use to maintain your clients?
So I have a CRM, obviously, most of us do. And texting. I text my clients every holiday, every birthday, every anniversary. I send them little gifts. I have a thing that I call a house anniversary, like a house anniversary. So I always text them and email them, and I'm constantly in touch with them because I'm so involved in the community. Odds are that we're going to see each other around town all the time anyway. And so even when they move out of state, they still stay in touch and they send me referrals all the time. Last year, 60% of my business was referrals, not leads.
Yeah. At one point, 96% was mine. Now it's about 80.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so busy with the referrals that I don't do a lot of advertising. It's the Buffini way,
Right.
but I have a different take on it now. So,
That's
so
good.
I think that it is important to stay up on education and take advantage. There's a lot of free things that are out there. I don't like to badmouth agents or anything, but I'm going to. When you have an agent that goes, well, I've been in the business 30 years and blah, 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 blah. I have two of those right now, the transactions, and those are my worst two transactions because somebody thinks they know what they're doing and clearly they don't.
Right.
So it's important to, in any industry, that you know what's going on so that you can stand apart and
I
the
agree.
legalities.
Of course, and that's the funniest thing because in our area there are a lot of really old agents. And when I get contracts from them, I look at it and I just I'm a stickler for the rules and I'm a stickler for contracts because that's legal paperwork. So it doesn't matter if it's just an addendum, it's a legal paperwork from the state of New Jersey. So you should be paying attention. And I have no problem telling those agents, even though they're 30 years older than me, to say, hey, listen, this line is blank, this line is blank. You're missing this addendum, this addendum. I am not submitting this until the packet is complete. So please work on it and send it back to me. And in the beginning, I wasn't like that because I was intimidated because they had so much more experience than me.
Mhm.
But then I became the president of my association, and from that point on, I didn't care about what I said and to whom, because if I made it to the top, who's better than me? Who's allowed to tell me that I can't do this? And I know what the rules are. Plus, I have a really good broker in my main office that when people make me question, I know the rules, I know the laws because I stay apprised of everything that's going on. But I'll call him and I'll say, hey, Kyle, this is what this agent told me. This is what I know. Is what I know the correct way, or are they correct in what they're telling me? And 100% of the time, I'm correct. But I do like to double check because maybe I missed something. I'm not perfect. But I'm always correct because I always know my stuff. And that's what I do in my office because I'm the broker manager. My goal is to teach my agents the right way as opposed to throwing them in the deep end and saying, figure it out.
It's interesting because there's a transaction, we closed it, thank you. But yesterday, when it happened at 4:45 p.m.,
Congratulations.
thanks, but it was a 6-week stinking contract. And because the
Wow.
seller kept dragging it and said, I can't move until June 30th, we were ready to close on the 1st of June,
Oh
and
my.
it's like the first 2 weeks we were through the process. And so she calls me Friday. I'm sitting down to dinner with my family. My parents are in town, and she's frantic because her seller's signing in 15 minutes. And she's like, Charisse, there's a transfer fee because it's an HOA. There's a transfer fee and it's $500 and we didn't know this and we didn't da 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 da. And I'm like, huh? And they go, this was part of the offer we submitted 6 weeks ago that your
Right.
seller was agreed to pay the transfer fees, the reinvestment, like all this stuff. She's like, but that's a buyer's fee. But you agreed to pay for it when we wrote the offer and you
Exactly.
accepted the offer. Yeah, but my seller's refusing to sign this. And I'm like, so she's going to breach contract?
That's right.
Earnest money's 2,000, which means for those that don't understand, she would get her earnest money back and she'd get another 2,000 from the seller. So she's
Very nice.
trying over $500, but yet we have 2,000 that she's going to end up having to pay us. Okay.
Right.
And so long story short, she's like, well, you need to call your buyer and see if she'll pay for this. I'm like, no.
You signed legal paperwork. No way.
And the crazy thing is she happens to own 3 units in that complex and sits on the board. So how do you not know that it's a $500 fee?
They know.
Oh,
They all know.
so I call my broker, just like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm right here, but I just want to double check. She's like 100% sure you're totally fine. It's the seller's responsible. So anyway, I didn't hear back. I tried calling her, tried texting. I'm like, hey, sorry, it's on you, and never responded. Never like, did she sign or did she not? And she did. But it's just interesting that, I mean, me as an agent, had I made that mistake, which I've never done, knock on wood, but eventually maybe I will. But had I made that mistake, I would never have called that agent. I would have said, I'm going to cover that money.
You would have eaten it. Absolutely. I agree.
And I think that that's where integrity comes into play in any business that you're at, is that making sure that if you make a mistake, that you own the mistake and that you obviously make up for it because
Absolutely. And
otherwise,
you know what stinks? In the state of New Jersey, the state is geared towards the buyers, not the sellers. I
mhm,
had a listing in town where the agent wrote on the contract that the washer and dryer is staying.
yeah.
I pointed it out to the attorney and I said, "Can you please figure this out in attorney review because we are not leaving the washer and dryer. It's not on our seller's disclosure." And it's not on our listing. It specifically says on the listing, washer and dryer excluded. But I didn't want to argue with the agent because he wasn't very nice. And I said, "Can you please handle it?" The attorney said yes, but he didn't handle it.
Oh,
And so we are a day away from closing, and the buyers are coming back and saying, "We just want to make sure the washer and dryer are staying." And I'm saying, "No, because it's on our listing that they are excluded and they're not supposed to do that." And the attorney handled it in attorney review. And the agent says to me, "There was nothing discussed in attorney review." And I freaked out, and it was my seller's attorney. It wasn't an attorney that I used or recommended, and I had zero pull with him. And I kept emailing him, "Did you handle washer and dryer?" He was a really old guy, like in his 90s, never used email. Everything was faxed over. He didn't pick up his phone. His paralegal was older than dirt. So I couldn't even have a conversation with anyone. And in the end, I said, "Okay, I will pay for the washer and dryer because I should have done something differently." But I can tell you that from that point on, 7 years ago, everything is fine-tooth comb, and I don't leave anything for the attorneys to handle. Even if I know them, I'm handling everything on every level because I'm a control freak.
see, in Utah, we don't use attorneys. We are the attorney, basically, and we're not an attorney. But what I'm saying is, we are the legal person that's responsible for everything. And so I've always wondered about New Jersey or New York because I hear that as an agent, the attorneys do it and then you show up. But here, it's all our responsibility. So if, like, even though we write in a listing, it's excluded, if in the offer it says it's included and we didn't change that in an addendum, then they do get to keep them. So
Wow.
it's just interesting how every state is different and you have to
Yeah.
make sure you know the legality.
Jersey is a very litigious state.
Yeah.
If a client says to me they don't want to use an attorney, I tell them that I can't help them because I'm not taking that responsibility on. And not only that, the other side, whether they're buyers or sellers, the other side won't deal with them. So I'm setting myself up for failure, and I don't have time for that.
Yeah, I've heard in North
Mm.
Carolina, like there's a due diligence and then there's some other type of thing. So here we have due diligence, like due diligence you can cancel because you don't like that there was a fly in the kitchen. Like it doesn't matter. Like you can cancel for any reason and you get your earnest money back up until a due diligence. North Carolina, seller gets to keep your earnest money, so it has to be there's a different phrase that you have to use. And so like every state is different. And so for those of you that are buying or selling homes, you have to make sure that your agent knows what the heck they're doing and that
Exactly.
that they're experienced because it's scary what can happen. And a buyer and
Right.
a seller have no clue. That's why they hire you to do the job. And so if you get someone, it doesn't matter if they're 30 years into it, as we've talked about, or if they're brand new, or in somewhere in between. It's just making sure that you hire an agent that knows and cares.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's 100% true. And you know, it's buyer beware and seller beware because in our market here, we are shifting a little bit from a seller's market to a buyer's market. We're still a seller's market, but not as much of a seller market as we were a few months ago.
Right.
But sellers are thinking they can do things on their own, and it ends up horribly every single time.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, even buyers, they always, oh, well, I'm going to take care of it myself. I'm not joking. She's like, okay, I do want to hire you. And it's those type of things that you're trying to save yourself $3,000. But guess what? You're buying a home that's like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's really worth getting an expert to help you with those things because you
Absolutely.
have no clue. And especially right now, all the legalities.
It is. That's true. And not only that, I think in New Jersey, people are pretty hot-headed. In general, it's just how we are. That's why they call us the armpit of America. But the buyer and seller, they need a buffer
Yeah.
because if you put a seller and a buyer together, they're going to end up fighting and nothing will get sold or bought. So they really need someone in between, someone that's more diplomatic, someone that has vested interest, but our vested interest as agents is to help our clients more than anything else. And this is why I get upset with what we call bad agents because they don't look out for their buyers and sellers firsthand. And I get so frustrated because we take an oath. We are supposed to look for our client's best interest, not our own pocket. And that's the reason the real estate agents are one step up from sleazy car salespeople. It's the worst. And I always get these people that have been through horrible agents, and then I get them and I have to exceed all of their expectations because of their bad experience, which I'm happy to do because overall, generally speaking, my customer service is beyond regular, which is my only rule is treat the client how you would want to be treated. So
Exactly.
if I'm buying a house and I have a question at 10 o'clock at night, and I want to call my agent, you bet I'm picking up my client who's calling me. If they're texting me at 6 a.m., they're getting a response at 6 a.m. because they texted me first. If they have questions and if we have to talk about the same thing over and over and over again, that's what we're doing. Like, I know how to deal with anxiety. I know how to deal with financial issues. That's what I'm here for. So, as you know, we're not only real estate agents, we're therapists, we're babysitters, we're contractors. We're everything to everyone, and that's okay. I'm fully encompassing everything. I'm the one-stop shop. And if I can't do it, you bet I know somebody else who can.
Yeah. And then I went and got my lender license. My world
Good for
exploded.
you.
I know, but I think every agent should also, not that you should, because you can't do both transactions on both sides, but the
Right.
amount of information I've learned and things because of that has given me a whole newfound, like on the lender side, a newfound appreciation. I'm like, I never knew that. Why didn't you tell me that from a lender perspective? Like, I never knew. And so it's just interesting to see the perspectives of different people. Okay,
Yeah,
our time is over, but I do want to ask you one question.
sure.
If you were sitting on a park bench and a 9 month pregnant woman comes and sits next to you, first time mom, what advice would you give her, if anything, about being a mom?
Ooh, don't blink. Because the time goes by so quickly. I told my kid, he just graduated high school. I said to him, when you were born, the size of your head was the size of your entire body. And he didn't believe me, so I showed him pictures, but he was just born yesterday. How is he almost 18? That's not even possible. And it really stinks because by the time you realize that those years go by so quickly, it's already like pretty far along. So
Mhm.
I would tell her to take all the time in the world and concentrate on the child as much as she can. Because I think these days women want to have careers and we can be, jack of all trades and we can do all these different things. There is nothing a woman can't do. But what we forget is that we are the nurturers of the family. And if we are not home because we are focused on our career, that's something we can't go back and do. I'll be 48. I cannot have any more children. I would have loved to have like three more.
Mhm.
And I didn't do that because two was enough for me, but I wish I had. So I would tell her to just hold on to that baby as long as she can.
Yeah, and speaking as a mom who had four, a huge gap, and then two more, the first four, it is. The blink is very, very true. My baby just graduated college and he's in
Wow.
for a couple years. And so I have these other two that, still elementary school. One's now in junior high.
Oh,
But
good for you.
it helps me appreciate my time more. But then as you get older, you get busier. And so it's like, okay, it's just you have to enjoy the moments and you do have to schedule them first. And it's hard.
I agree.
Hard.
Yeah.
So, well, Karen, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Charisse. It was a pleasure.
And if our listeners wanted to find you, how would they do that?
They can look me up on Instagram, on Facebook. It's Karen Gonen Real Estate, New Jersey. Or they can call me. My number is 551-262-4062. And I'm attached to my phone, so anytime.
I don't think I've ever had, and I'm going on 175 interviews. No one has ever given their cell phone. So you must be rare.
What? Really?
I
That's
know,
fun.
I don't. It's crazy. Yep.
It
So,
is.
okay, well, thank you again. And moms and unbreakable mompreneurs. Today was more a discussion about your life and living your life and enjoying what you do and making sure that being a mom is first and foremost, but also making sure that you enjoy your career. So go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Sharice Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Sharice Walker.